Let's open our Sherburne County Board of Commissioners meeting of June 1st, 2021. Please rise for the moment of silence and the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, at this time, I'm looking for an approval of our regular meeting proposed agenda. Are there any deletions or additions? Bruce?
Thank you, Chair Danielowski. With the board's permission, we would like to add item 5.7, which would be consideration of receipt of a HHS grant award for housing.
Any other deletions or additions? Hearing none, then, I'd be looking for a motion to approve our regular meeting agenda with that addition as mentioned for item number 5.7 for the award, the grant award for HHS.
Madam Chair, I'll move approval.
Motion made by Commissioner Dolan.
I'll second.
Seconded by Commissioner Phobie. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. That motion carries. Moving on to items on our consent agenda. Are there any deletions?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I just would like to have us pull item 16 on the consent agenda. I just need a little clarification on that. We can get it and put it back on the consent agenda, or maybe I can get it right after we approve the consent agenda and we can handle it separate.
All right.
But I would move the consent agenda with all items with exception of
Commissioner Brandt?
Yeah, we have one more. On number 3, we wanted to add an alternate to that item, so I don't know if we just
We can
add to it or,
we can pull it and then address it and then move it separate.
okay.
All right. Any other deletions?
my motion would be amended to
Amended.
include item 3.
Okay, so
as
we have
well
a
as 16.
motion by Commissioner Smeezing and a second by Commissioner Brandt for the pulling of item number 3 on our consent agenda and item number 16 for separate consideration. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. That motion carries. Okay, we'll address item number 3, the appointment of the commissioner. And did you have something that you wanted to say about that, Barb?
Yeah, I just thought that for some committees, I know it's important for us to have alternates identified, and I think this is one of those committees that we should have an alternate, and I don't think that happened. So I would like us to do that.
And I know in our discussion at our last meeting on this, I was willing to serve as well, and I am still willing, so I would be willing to serve as that alternate on this committee.
A motion, Barbara as a member and Commissioner Danielowski as the alternate.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Smeezing.
I'll second.
We have a second by Commissioner Phobie. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. That motion carries. Okay, item number 16, Commissioner Smeezing.
I apologize, I just noticed it this morning, but I don't recall us ever using this fund for wages. And there's a half a summer intern in there. Is that a path we want to go down? You got the right person to answer that question.
Good morning, Commissioners. That's a really good question, Commissioner Smeezing. We actually have used it in the past. I know we used it last year, and this may be the 3rd year, but this is for sure the 2nd year. So again, these funds are generated through a portion of the recording fees, which isn't predictable, shall we say. I would never recommend that these funds be used for a permanent full-time position because of that fact. But because it's a temporary internship, and there's a set start point and an end point, it may be appropriate for that. Did I answer your question?
Yes, and this intern would be used for collecting data that,
So this is for the survey department, and what I can tell you that they talked about at our committee meeting was $20,000 would be set aside for 50% of the intern temporary worker costs. The work duties include assisting in researching, collecting, and documenting land information in the office and in the field. This will include working with the public land survey system data and under the immediate direction of the field and office survey technicians. And this is the same request from 2020. So again, this will be the second consecutive year in a row that we've approved this. Again, I think it's okay only because it's a temporary / interim.
sure.
I would never recommend that this be for a permanent full-time employee because of the fluidity of the income to this fund.
Perfect, and it seems to meet the mission of the funds. So I would make the motion to approve.
I'll
Okay.
second.
Motion by Commissioner Smeezing, seconded by Commissioner Dolan. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. That motion carries.
Thanks, Michelle.
All right, at this time, we have our open forum. Is there anybody signed up for open forum?
There is nobody signed up, Madam Chair.
All right. Nobody signed up, and we have nobody, we're all live, nobody online, correct? Okay. Okay, announcements. Commissioner Meslet, sorry, Administrator Meslet, what do you have for us?
Just a couple of things. If you're okay, let's start with board correspondence. Keisha, do you want to? We have 2 items in board correspondence that I just want to make sure the board's aware of. While she's pulling that up, I'll just cover legislative updates. Some great news, and since, did Jody leave already? Oh, man, she's too fast. Some great news, we actually have an author of state statute amongst us, or she was. The governor did sign the passage of the Senate and House Omnibus Health and Human Services Policy and Finance Bill. And in that is the language that we created and that Commissioner Phoebe and Jody testified on several times. And it was approved and is now state law. So that's pretty exciting, and congratulations to Jody for getting that completed. Second of all, Matt Massman did want to note for you this morning, just in terms of where things are at with the legislature, only one committee has met the deadline for completing its joint work last week, and that was the Commerce and Energy Bill. Higher education is close, and ag finance should not be too far off. Some good news, there seems to be consensus on $100 million for housing infrastructure bonds. There was also discussion in the tax conference committee last week about reaching an agreement. There's a couple of hiccups there, though. Homeless prevention aid is being considered, as well as 4D low-income apartment taxation relief that could be brought in there. However, that could have some impact for counties that we weren't aware of, so Micah and AMC are tracking that for us. Also, just a little bit of a somber note, the Department of Revenue has decided not to appeal the Enbridge case. If you've been tracking that, and while it doesn't have direct impacts for Sherburne County, it's noted that beyond the 13 counties that are impacted by that decision, everybody is saying we can expect significant follow-on challenges for anything that state-assessed properties do. And so we'll have to take a serious look at what that could mean for Sherburne County, given that decision. And then just a note, it appears that it's unlikely that the single-day special session on June 14th will resolve everything. So more and more, the hard deadline of June 30th is becoming a reality, and state employees were given notice of layoffs on Friday. So that is kind of pro forma of when you face a potential government shutdown. With that, just a couple of things for board correspondence. First of all, there's a very interesting press release from the Greater St. Cloud Development Corporation on a labor study, and it indicates, as some have seen in the media or discussed, that there is a shortage of labor in certain sectors, and it is causing some significant impacts in the area. There was also a second correspondence handed out. Keisha, do you have that one available, or? And while she's pulling up that one, there it is. Oh, no, that's the survey. Okay. Also, just for board information, we did receive a correspondence late last week from Baldwin Township that they had passed a resolution regarding Second Amendment, and I'll be putting that on board correspondence for the next meeting. They've asked that it be forwarded to all commissioners. I think we'll just stop with that unless there's any questions for announcement.
Good. Okay. Moving on then to our regular agenda, looking to item 5.1, receive a presentation by Sherburne County Safe Roads Coalition. Roxanne. And Chris.
Good morning, Commissioners. Thank you very much for having us in today.
Good morning.
My name is Roxanne Schrader. Of course, I work for the Sheriff's Office, but I am also representing our Safe Roads Coalition for Sherburne County today. I am pleased to be able to introduce you to Zachary Knapp. He and I kind of crossed paths about 2 years ago. Actually, Amanda Larson had contacted me, who had someone from the community had contacted her in regards to a student that was looking to provide some type of public service announcement for the greater good in our community. So I had contacted Zachary from that initial email, had a conversation with him, and found that traffic safety was of interest to him, so it was a natural fit to have him go with the Safe Roads Coalition. Brought that back to Sheriff Brott along with the Safe Roads Coalition, and they were very interested in having our youth participate in this manner to make a positive effort in our community in regards to trying to change some of those different behaviors that are happening out on our roadways. So with various different discussions, Zachary was able to provide a public service announcement that was actually released recently, not only in our local community, but also statewide, and I have a feeling it's even gone further than our state boundaries and have had a very good reaction to that, not only locally but also statewide. So Keisha, if you would please play the video, and then I'm going to have Zach kind of talk about the process of making this for us.
Our families are often taken for granted. They're always there for us, until they aren't. In 2019 alone, 364 people died on the road in Minnesota. Human errors cause these easily preventable crashes. These Minnesota fatalities left 364 families with an empty chair at the dinner table. So before you commit a senseless, careless, selfish mistake while driving, think about how it will affect your family if you don't come home. Go to minnesotatzd.org to learn more. Everybody has a
Hello, everybody. Thanks for having me. So my name's Zachary Knapp. I'm just going to kind of talk about who I am and what I was doing here. I'm a recent graduate of Spectrum High School as of like 4 days ago, so that's cool. Graduated with a full associate's, which is also very cool. I'll be attending St. Thomas University in the fall to major in digital media, so like video production and all that stuff. Kind of as mentioned before, I kind of have a passion for journalism. I've been in it for 4 years. I've gone to 2 national journalism conventions, one in San Francisco and one in Chicago, and I've actually won awards for PSAs and commercials I've produced in the past. And yeah, so this was for a thing that my school, Spectrum High School, called their senior project. So Spectrum High School is a public charter, and they focus really heavily on community service. I entered in 6th grade, and every single quarter we've had a class called Service Learning, and it's where we just go into the community and serve. We learn the values of working with people, and it teaches us a lot about life, and I think it's a really important skill that we learn. But for this, our senior project is like the final for high school. So everyone has to leave a legacy. It's called the Senior Legacy Project. Now, it doesn't matter what it is. Some people made tie blankets and donated them to hospitals. Other people raised money, organized food drives, whatever. But I knew I wanted to do something with videos because I knew I had a passion and a skill for it. And I really wanted to use my skills to benefit my community. And for the traffic safety part, I had to pick an issue. I didn't know really what I wanted to do with that. But I knew I wanted an issue that affects young people. And I can guarantee you that traffic safety is something that affects a lot of young people, especially people who have just gotten their license. Like, I don't know if you guys drive too much, but if you look around, I bet you'll see it. Like people driving and texting and making full course meals in their passenger seat, at a stoplight. It's kind of crazy. And so I see that every day, and so I kind of wanted to do something to change that. And so I got into the conversation with the TZD and kind of talked about how I could help, and they agreed that a PSA would be a great way to go. And so from there, we had a couple meetings. We actually met on March 11th, 2020. 2 days later, COVID pandemic really took hold of everything. So a couple plans were changed. I was going to use like my friends and go to outdoor venues and really have a bigger production sort of thing, but that kind of all had to change. So it was my family. They're sitting right here. So they're the wonderful actors who helped me out with the project. But yeah, so over the summer, I just kind of made scripts. I had communication with Mr. Lindblom and Mrs. Schrader here. And we kind of talked about what we wanted to see in the PSA. And then around the fall, I filmed the PSA, and then I edited it in iMovie. And then we gave it out. So that's kind of just who I am and what I did. And yeah, I appreciate you guys having me here today.
Thanks, Zach.
Yeah, that is really
Great
cool,
work.
Zach. Congratulations on your graduation.
Thank you.
And becoming a Tommy. That is really cool. We will look forward to watching your future for sure. I know we're going to see you again. But you just hit it so well with that, just a short, to-the-point video that was so impactful. I've watched it a handful of times, and you can visualize yourself that being you. We all have kids, and we've all raised children and stuff, so we all know that could be anybody's family table at any time. So you did a great job. Hopefully you'll be able to resonate with the youth everybody that drives actually can be reminded of that. So thank you very much. Yes, Commissioner Colby?
So just wanted to say thanks, Zach, for serving your community so big and so well at this young age, and congratulations to the family members that are here.
Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you.
So I think if the board is amenable, the family, I think, had requested once the award is done to do a picture too, so.
Yep, no, that is totally fine. Okay.
Well, I've got a tough act to follow, and there's nothing I can say that can top that. My name's Becky Putsky. I'm a law enforcement liaison from the Office of Traffic Safety. I have the privilege of serving Sherburne County. Typically, when we talk about towards zero deaths, we focus on enforcement, or we focus on engineering, or we focus on education, or we focus on emergency medical services. Where I get so excited about days like today is now we're talking the everybody else, and that's who Zach represents so well. I say the future is bright. I'm looking forward to seeing this man's byline in the future. I think the family has very much to be proud of here. So thank you for having us today. I have a challenge coin and a certificate to present to Zach. These challenge coins are hard to come by. This is a program that was initiated by Director Hansen, Office of Traffic Safety in 2019. And you have to work really, 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 really hard to get one of these. So for Zach, again, congratulations.
Do you want to do a picture at this time?
Yeah, if everybody's okay, maybe we can gather right here in front of the flags.
You want us, we can move out?
Yeah.
With the board?
No, I think they just want the.
No, we got the board in the back row.
Oh,
here.
okay, all right.
And maybe and the sheriff?
Yep, and the sheriff.
Yeah.
Do you want us to go down? Okay.
Oh, they want us live and in person.
Clearwater. When we're done, if you just return.
You guys are the
Do you think you need a back row?
You need a
Would it be
back row?
better? Back row?
Yeah.
Should we do chairs or? Felix and I
Go
have
forward, I'm a back row guy.
Kind of back 2 rows.
I always try to go back,
You
but
guys are taller.
everyone else disagrees with me.
Like we knew what we were doing. Framed on the
Great
program.
job, great job, yep, congratulations. Oh, and a nice firm handshake, look at you, you got it. You have got it. Yes, it was very, very, very true. All right, I'm gonna backtrack for a second with the, board's okay to, back to correspondence. There was a letter that came in that, I think we should, hear and address how we wanna handle it.
Thank you, Chair Danielewski. We did receive a request from Clear Lake Township to consider either representation or a letter of support for an upcoming meeting that they're going to be having with the City of Clear Lake and the City of Clearwater to discuss the Clearwater City's move to extend its extraterritorial jurisdiction for subdivisions into Sherburne County. It's a moving target. I did put in the resolution that was passed by the City of Clearwater. And at this point, staff would recommend that we do a letter of just general concern with the process that was used by the City of Clearwater and encourage that there be some communication and some dialogue with the affected parties. We still have to do a little bit of research on our end, both in the County Attorney's Office and also in Planning and Zoning to see what the implications may be should Clearwater continue to extend its subdivision ordinance into what is now Clear Lake Township. So with that, we're open to the board's thoughts. The attorney may want to jump in here, but I think our recommendation would be that we draft a letter from the chair and just say, hey, we're somewhat concerned by this move, and we think that there should be some dialogue and some conversation here pretty quick.
Okay. You had something you wanted to comment on?
Madam Chair, Commissioners, statutorily, this is authorized under Minnesota Statute 462.358. There's actually an Attorney General's opinion involving the same issue from 1995, involving our friends from Mille Lacs County. The part that I don't have the answer to you, well, first of all, the statute does require that there be underlying regulations which allow for a review of the content of the applications and to have a coordination of reviews of that. I did reach out to the City of Clearwater on, I want to say Friday. Sorry, things are blending a little bit. Was unable to get a hold of anyone. I did send an email asking for a copy of their regulations. As soon as I get those, I will share those with you because obviously that has implications. The answer that I don't have, however, for you is how does that interplay if there's an orderly annexation agreement in place with the township itself? So that answer I do not have for you.
Madam Chair?
Amazing, this is your district?
Yeah, this involves Clear Lake Township as well as the City of Clear Lake. I think it's important that we communicate dually with township and city. it is a concern. I mean, we have Elk River, didn't go over into Otsego, Big Lake, and Monticello have not crossed the river.
Yep.
We get to St. Cloud, there's been legislation to make a St. Cloud County because of the difficulties of doing business in 3 counties. So I think it's pretty clear that there is some issues with coming across the river for them. I think, I don't want to be just parochial, though. I think that, you know, it's fair for them to have the discussion. I think there's some underlying political agendas that are involved, probably by all parties here. So I think that will make things a little murkier, but I do think it's a good idea for us to get a letter out and get on the record as supporting some careful conversation before that can happen.
And I think that is very helpful. I know that at one point here, some years back, and there was an orderly annexation agreement in place with Big Lake Township and the city of Big Lake. And Monticello kind of started looking to go down this path. And through conversation, we were able to push it back. But during that time, your orderly annexation didn't help because there was some court ruling somewhere along the way that basically null and voided that as being a way to stave off that move. So hopefully we can be of assistance in that correspondence to perpetuate those conversations because they can be helpful.
Chair?
Yes, Commissioner
Yes, I
Bobby.
agree that it's a good role for us to encourage those conversations. And there are communities that don't have a river between them, that these things are going on right now. So I think that would be a helpful, I support that.
Yeah.
Because often what I find is locals ask us to start trying to take sides. And I think what's important for us is to, since we really don't have a dog in the race, to encourage conversations with parties that are involved.
Mm-hmm. And I think some of the concern with this is also that the city of Clear Lake and the city of Clearwater, and I'm sure Clear Lake Township, worked together on creating a wastewater plant. So they worked together on putting that along Highway 23, right?
24, City of Clear Lake and Clearwater share a wastewater treatment plant.
So that's already there for infrastructure for them. And I know that when Monticello talked about it, they just talked about putting a heated pipe underneath the bridge for the water. So I think we really want them to talk with each other so they can work it out together.
So if there's consensus of the board, we'll draft that letter and get it out as soon as possible. We
Okay.
don't know when the meeting is going to be, so that'll be the next touchstone on that. And then real quick on 4.2, just a reminder for the board on your calendars, June 29th at 10 a.m., we're hoping to have our employee recognition. It'll be a larger event than normal because of the delays with COVID. We are planning it outdoors, so hopefully you can put that on your calendars. And then 4.3, just a note for the board again, that we, after polling the board, are canceling the July 13th meeting of the board, and we'll be posting a special meeting of the board for July 15th at 10 a.m., so a slightly different timeline. And also, we did post, since there'll be 3 commissioners and 1 attending remotely, the NACO event, July 9th through the 12th, we did post it as a potential special meeting, just so that you are covered for your social events out there.
Okay. All right, thank you for allowing.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Commissioner Smeezing.
Can the employee appreciation and the changes be sent out with Outlook and meeting?
Yes,
Invites?
following this meeting, if you're okay with these, we'll print them out as Outlook calendar invites.
Okay. All right. Moving on forward to our regular agenda again, item number 5.2, consider the acceptance and award for provision of human resource information system services to ADP Incorporated.
Good morning, Madam Chair,
Morning.
County Board of Commissioners. Yes, I'm here asking you to consider acceptance and award for provision of the HRIS to ADP. Before I start my agenda item, I'll let you know this was the first HRIS RFP I've ever done, and I hope it's the last. Very challenging to try to find the right system with all the different functionalities we need, the computer security to take into consideration, and then of course also the cost. We started our process in March 2021. We went out for bid looking for a system that would help with payroll processing, time and attendance, benefits, onboarding, leave of absence management. Just a reminder that our current payroll system will be supported for 2 to 4 more years, and then we're forced to leave. Brian Cameron has told me that our time and attendance and benefits system could die anytime, so we needed to go through this process. We had an evaluation committee comprised of 9 individuals that represented administration, HR, auditor, treasurer, and also IT. The HR and benefits technology consultants from Gallagher assisted us with the process, and they were invaluable. Their expertise helped lead us. We received 9 proposals. We had evaluation criteria set forth within our RFP, functionality, management criteria, cost, service, security. So after review of the proposals and some very comprehensive demos, 4 hours for each of the finalists, the evaluation committee does recommend ADP Incorporated as the county's chosen HRIS service provider. The ongoing annual costs of ADP and the identified cost of switching to a new HRIS, $135,775.50 would be that annual ongoing cost. One-time implementation cost is $20,700, and then we're estimating a one-time contingency cost of about $25,000, just not knowing what will be needed to move to a new system. The IT department does have approximately $74,000 right now in the budget, so that additional ongoing costs, if we move to ADP, would be $61,700 approximately. The additional costs would be included in IT's budget beginning next year in 2022. All 2021 costs, what we're asking for this year will be paid from the YES account. And I'm currently working with Mr. Tim Syme on a final agreement, and that would be available in county administration to review once it is signed. Any questions on the process or the system?
Commissioner Sneezing?
You think the RFP was hard, you wait till you get to implementation.
I know.
The one thing I think with this, you probably want to be pretty careful that you're covered with them getting us through and getting us and we don't end up with a lot of extra charges because something was difficult or different than what they had expected. That's, in some of these deals, I've seen that get pretty expensive pretty quickly, so, for what it's worth.
Any other questions?
Madam Chair.
Going.
No, I just want to, those RFPs for this type of system are ridiculous, like you said. So hats off to taking the time to do it right. And it looks like you guys went through the process and had the right stakeholders to make a good decision here. So, you know, doing it a couple years ahead of time before we're forced to is probably a good play. So appreciate you guys putting in the work to do this.
And speaking of that, a couple of years ahead of time, so we would plan this to implement in 4 years? Or 3, or whichever, or failure, whichever happens first?
If the stars align and we reach our goal, we will be implemented by January 1st, 2022. So we would actually start implementing now.
While you
and
still have the back.
4 to 6 months is the estimated if everything goes smooth.
All right.
Madam
Yes.
Chair, and exiting our current provider, they're not going to be in that business. Is that the case? You said that we wouldn't. They didn't enter into the RFP. Didn't try to. Yes, they did. They did.
So a little history on that. We've been with Highline, Diane, I think for about 20 years.
2002.
And a company called NeoGov recently bought them out. So, which they are saying they're giving their current clients fair warning that they won't be supporting the current system,
Okay, so the system changes no matter what.
Correct, yes.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I just, there again, that's another sticky point. If you don't have their cooperation as you exit out of it, it can become more difficult too. I mean, there's, as you well know, there's a lot of players to work with in accomplishing this, so, okay.
All right, then with that being said, I would be looking for a motion to consider the acceptance and the award for the provision of human resources information systems service to ADP Incorporated.
I so move.
Motion made by Commissioner Brandt,
I'll second.
seconded by Commissioner Phobie. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. That motion carries. The journey is just beginning.
It is. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you. Moving on then to consider the American Rescue Plan Act update and recommended approvals and expenditures. Dan?
I think we skipped 3.
Did I skip 3? Oh, I'm sorry. Didn't mean to. Back it up to 3. Consider the approval of the AO docs as a technology solution for social services electronic filing systems. Amanda?
No.
Sorry about that.
Surely you don't want to skip over
No,
another
I don't want to skip
technology
over
item,
that.
so.
For sure.
Keisha, I do have a PowerPoint. Promise this will be my only PowerPoint.
Especially when you brought a PowerPoint. We definitely don't want to skip
Trying to
that.
get off PowerPoints, but they really help. So good morning. Thank you for taking the time and allowing me to talk about technology and a proposed change to our electronic file system for our social service programs. I also have my right-hand man, Mr. Tony Masters, who knows technology a lot better than I do, so I might defer to him for our last slide and any questions. In 2016, HHS made the move to go paperless with our social service files. This was a huge endeavor. We had all paper files prior. This was lengthy. It was very staff intensive. It was also very expensive. Saying all that, we would obviously never make the move to go back to paper files. At that time, we did extensive vetting of solutions, and we went with the solution Northwoods Copilot. We already had Pilot for our economic assistance programs, and so Copilot works off that Pilot Enterprise, and it's a mobile version really designed for social services, and overall we've been fairly pleased. Now that said, we were notified in February that Northwoods was going to be sunsetting their Copilot document management system effective June next year, so we only have a 1-year window. So they were offering counties a 50% discount if Copilot users move to their new product, which is the Traverse system. So already had a little red flag knowing that 50% off. Probably going to be a pretty high number. So while we have been pleased with the Northwoods product for the most part, absent some typical IT customer service issues, we kind of have a bad taste in our mouth seeing that we just made this move, this very expensive move to the Cadillac version, Northwoods, only 5 years ago, only for it to be been telling us that it's being sunsetted. And so the new product, Traverse, their initial estimate came out with a $400,000 price tag, and so a 50% discount on that was still $200,000. So when I brought this to our county administrator, before we go to the board asking you fine people for $250,000, we really needed to do our due diligence. So County Administrator Messelt indicated that we need to do 2 things. One is to work with Northwoods to see if we can't negotiate the price down. And then the second would be to research other solutions. So is there another product that can work, kind of give us the same functionality at a lower price? So we did vet 4 solutions. One is AO Docs, which works off the Google Enterprise. Another one is Caseworks. Again, the Traverse system, the Northwoods replacement, and then also Highland OnBase. All right, this is a lot of numbers, so I'll try to break it down. Also, my caveat is you all know that technology is not comparing apples to apples, and so we really tried to do the best we could with our comparison numbers. So I'm just going to be talking about the first column and the last column. So the first column is our implementation and first year costs, and then our last column is kind of that 5-year cost of ownership. So first of all, costs also aren't just black and white, so we had to take into account implementation costs, ongoing annual costs, also what it requires of our IT support on an ongoing basis, and then also efficiencies with our worker functionality. So if you just look at that first column, Northwoods with all the bells and whistles, which includes like a search feature, some AI technology. If you take all of those bells and whistles out, the Northwoods Traverse or a negotiated price is the most cost effective. Again, on that initial black and white number, but as I said, they took out all the bells and whistles to get there, and then followed by AO Docs, which really does have max functionality plus some. And then the other three kind of reside in that $400,000 range. If you look at the last column, so that total cost of ownership, really Google, AO Docs, and the Highland On-Base system are tied at $500,000. Sorry. And then you'll see where the other ones fall. So based on the 4 factors that I had already indicated, the cost, the ongoing cost, what's required of our IT support, and then also enhanced worker functionality. Our recommendation is to go with the AO Docs platform, which works off Google. We were blown away by its functionality and its features. We think it's a fairly reasonable cost, of course, if we were forced to sunset in the first place, and it really gives us the most bang for our buck. So really to talk about kind of the business case of what AO Docs can provide us with, I'm going to turn this over to Tony.
Hello, Commissioners. Very thankful for you to have me here today. Yeah, I was truly blown away by the AO Docs software. They had us provide basically a workflow process, checklist, if you will, for child protection assessments to demonstrate what their product can do. And what was demonstrated to us really is a system that would have a lot of, could assist us in a lot of ways, such as with the work processes. It would flag and alert case managers and supervisors if there's a document that's due. We could automate case file reviews so that you know, instead of having staff time, it really could be an automated process where we could be auditing case files on a monthly basis, a regular basis. The process flows with the alerts that I talked about. You know, that could be set up for different program areas too. So for instance, pre-petition screenings or out-of-home placement process for children, that we would be able to build a system that could really help us not to miss things. Another thing that I was really impressed by was just the way that it's able to pull data out of the electronic records. You know, currently we're doing data collection through multiple means, such as SSIS, activity reports, waiver management systems, SharePoint reports. We should be able to actually get all of our business needs as far as data collection met through the artificial intelligence that's built into this software. You know, where they did a demonstration for us too of redaction software that's part of this system too, which I think could be a huge time saver for clerical staff that are assigned to those duties, and probably would be more error-proof as well. An example of something that it would be able to do is to pull data out of bank statements. Our adult protection staff are spending an inordinate amount of time manually pulling data from bank statements as part of financial exploitation cases. So I could see a lot of benefit to that. Overall, I was just amazed at what they were able to put together with just limited information that we gave them. It was very impressive, the resources that a Google partner has at their fingertips. Couple other things that were included with this too. They have translation software, so forms and documents can be translated to other languages. And the forms would all be ADA compliant. Our current system, our forms are not ADA compliant, and that's was really one of the key factors I was looking at with all of the systems, where both AO Docs and Traverse had documents and forms that were ADA compliant. So questions, somebody?
Any questions?
Madam Chair, I see we go out 5 years. The one has $25,000. Chances of that changing after, I mean, you look at that and you say, well, if we go 10 years, then we save $125,000. But that's probably not how it would work at the end of the day anyhow, right?
It's my understanding that we end up seeing a lot of additional charges when it comes to Highland on base. That's at least what our experience has been. But yeah, I can see what your point is with that, but.
And our IT people have been involved in reviewing this. And
Yep. So part of the, it was both Amanda and I, Jody Hirung, Brian Kamen, and Adam McAllister in some instances that was part of our demos. So we did 2 demos with AO Docs, 2 with Highland on base. We did a couple with Traverse. Caseworks, we only did 1 demo with them, but IT was involved throughout.
Madam Chair, basically the same comments I gave for the last one. These technology RFPs are an utter pain, but if you do them the right way and put the time and effort into going through them, I think ultimately, making smart decisions based on not just what you need it to do now, but what you can do with it in the future, it comes to light. So appreciate you guys putting in the time. That's a lot of demos to sit through, and I know they're painful. So I appreciate you guys taking the time to do it the right way.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So obviously, our ask today is for you to authorize funds up to $200,000 to purchase this AO Docs for, again, that's implementation and the first year costs. We'd be working to kind of in tandem to sunset Northwoods. Again, that already has a sunset date of June 2022. So we'd hopefully go live with this new product January. Then we'd be working through the contracting process, and Mr. Tim Syme can't wait to get his hands on a Google contract and work with their legal team, so he said. And then in terms of how we would pay.
That doesn't look like that.
In terms of how we would pay for it, I've been in conversations with Mr. Weber, and he indicated that this would probably be a good use of ARPA dollars for the lost revenue, but absent that, our HHS reserves could then be tapped.
So it doesn't qualify for, excuse me, Madam Chair, doesn't qualify for ARPA funds, but you would replenish it out of funds that were being paid back for something else.
Yeah, I think that's my understanding.
All right. Well, that being said, if there are no other questions, I'd be looking for that motion then to approve the AO Docs as a technology solution for social services electronic filing system.
I so move.
Motion made by Commissioner Brandt,
I'll second.
seconded by Commissioner Dolan. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. That motion carries. And I'm so happy that we have people that know how to travel through technology, because it's not me. All right. Now we'll move on to 5.4. Consider the ARPA, is that how we're saying it?
Yeah.
Update and recommended approvals and expenditures. Dan?
Good morning, Commissioners. I know the county attorney needs to get to another meeting, so if you're okay, we'll have her item bump up a little bit. I think I had it third on the agenda, but we'll bump her up to number 1. As you recall, any requests over 50,000 will be brought forward by the department head to the county board. So Kathy is looking for a staffing request that would be over 50,000, so I'll invite her up.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, with your permission, can I give you some background before I go forward?
By all means, thank you.
Thank you kindly. As you're well aware, back in March of 2020, the county court system basically shut down with the exception of emergent issues. So what that meant is that a lot of the criminal trials, a lot of the ongoing civil matters, our probation violations, you name it, they got backed up. That then left us with a significant backlog that we're trying to work through, and the courts have put a full court press on for us to do that. And I'm very appreciative of the efforts that they're doing. I think I shared with you last time that in mid-May we had 145 jury trial settings between now and November. We have tried 2 of those cases. We've added at least 1 more. So we're now at about 144 and counting. As you're well aware too, during that time period, because of the concerns for the health and safety of folks within the jail, they were quashing warrants. So anything that was on a misdemeanor, gross misdemeanor, was quashed. Again, you're dealing with only the emergent issues during that time period, and that has continued through today. At the same time, our new felony cases were rising from 2019 to 2020. We saw approximately a 4% increase in the first 4 months of 2021. We've seen, I can't remember if it's 7 or 9% increase. I believe it's 7% increase. During the time period of 2019 to 2020, we saw a 24% increase in our civil commitment cases. That has not abated. We've also seen some other outfalls, which won't surprise you at all, dealing with mental health issues that are coming through on Rule 20s, mentally ill and dangerous. And in addition to that, we've had some very high-profile cases, as you're also aware of. So that's kind of more on the criminal division, but the civil division has also been impacted, along with the ongoing issues that we continue to work with each of the departments on. There's also been a pull from our department in terms of making sure that we're compliant with ARPA guidelines. Where's Tim? There he is. A lot of his time has been dedicated to working through the COVID implications, working with the regulatory outcomes. I'm pretty sure that he has standing authority to stand in Dan's office on a daily basis. So against that, when COVID first came in, we didn't have the calendars, so I let go an office assistant, and that person went over to Health and Human Services. And because I couldn't justify it, and I didn't want to lay anybody off either. So we're actually dealing with a little bit of a reduced numbers of persons right now. In 2020, I also saw my chief deputy retire. He walked out with 30 years of experience. That's a tough loss. In lieu of that, what we did is we ended up hiring a contract attorney, as we are all aware of. And then just historically, since I've been county attorney, my recollection is that we've only hired 1 additional attorney since 2003. So we've also lost, or during that time period, we only have 1 victims witness advocate. We used to have 2 when I first came in the office. So we've tried to be conservative on our staff. But we've gotten to the point where we're in need of help. What I'd actually like to do is I'd like to bring in 2 attorneys. But the problem with that is I don't have enough staff to train them because they're busy in court. So we'd like to stagger that. We'd like to bring in an individual as county attorney now, and then on a contract position, and then have a full-time position in January of 2022. We would also like to take our office assistant, who's at 28 hours, and bring that individual up to full-time. And in order to support all of the work that goes on with the trials, probation violations, post-conviction hearings, etc., we would also like to add an administrative assistant. So those are my asks. I don't know what questions you may have for me.
Any questions? Commissioner Schmeezing.
Okay, so you have a contract attorney now.
Correct.
That is, we got one Sam.
Correct.
And now you want to add another contract attorney, so we'd have 2, or is that the one I'm looking at on this?
So the thought process is to move the contract attorney, who is a 13-year veteran of my office, into an attorney 3. We would then bring on another person on that contract.
Okay.
We would then ask, in terms of attorney slots, in January of 2022 to bring on a full-time attorney.
Okay, and this is all okay with the American Recovery Act, the ARPA.
I'll defer to Dan on that question.
Then, and my questions are the same for the human services. I mean, how are we going to, we're making permanent hires with 3 years of funding? Well, and so how are we going, and we don't want to hire people and then say we're done with you. So how are we going to, with both of these, the human services one, I do want to see how we're going to transition them into our workforce, because we'll probably need them, but we might not. That's what I want to see, and I don't see it here. So,
Madam Chair,
Yes.
quick question.
Commissioner Dolan.
On that note, so I'm just trying to make sure I understand this. We're actually, one of these is filling Sam's position that he left originally.
Correct.
It's moving that, so it's an attorney we already had at one point.
Right.
And then one of the admin is backfilling an admin position that we lost during COVID by moving him over to HHS.
Correct.
Right, so two of these positions actually already existed prior. It's just a juggling of funds to a certain extent.
That's correct.
Okay.
So the new positions that I'm asking for are, number one, an individual on contract, so it's defined, and then an administrative assistant, and that person I would anticipate continuing to keep. So.
Okay. And just one more point of clarification. So we're looking at the person that we're hiring on contract. Is that you're hoping to move them into a full-time attorney position in January? Is that the progression, or is that two different people?
The person that I have right now on contract, I'd move into an Attorney 3 position right away. That's Sam's position. And then I would add somebody on contract, and then I would open up a full-time position in January. That person who's on contract would be able to apply for it, but would not necessarily be guaranteed that, because I still have to follow the personnel policy.
Right. So I guess I'm asking that the contract position and then the full-time position, they're not going to exist at the same time. One's going to eventually.
The contract would only be through the time period of, I think I scheduled it through the 2023 to coincide with the monies from the feds.
Makes sense. Thank you.
Does that help me
Mr. Smeezing.
understand it?
I'm sorry.
So let's not talk contract, let's talk attorney positions. What this does is we add 2 attorney positions, either contract or, is that right?
Correct.
Okay.
But you're adding to, you're actually adding at one because the other one already was in your budget.
One's replacing Sam.
One's
Right,
replacing.
one's replacing Sam that already was a budgeted attorney.
So
Sorry.
is it 2 or is it 1? Because to me, it looks like 2. And that's.
It is. One is a contract attorney. I'm asking for a contract attorney for the time period from now and through 2023. And then I'm asking for an additional, I'm going to keep them in January of 2022.
So budget implication-wise, though, are we only adding to the budget by the addition of the oncoming contract attorney?
No, we'd be adding for both the full-time position as well as the contract attorney.
So when Sam retired, you did not continue to budget his?
No, we did, and that's the person that I would move into his slot. I'm sorry, and I apologize. I didn't want to use names. That's why it sounds so confusing.
So if you think about it this way, the contract attorney currently will continue, that the person will move, but the position, the chair will stay. So it's effectively adding 2 attorneys. And Dan can talk about the ARPA funding, but I would go to Commissioner Schmiesing's comment. It's a little easier with the county attorney than it is with HHS because of the contract having a start and end date, so it's a little more similar to what you would know as a limited term employee. Tammy's advised us not to do LTEs for full-time positions. The contract attorney, of course, works because it's a contract. But because these are ARPA funding and because we will be in administration and management of ARPA funding through 2024, it's our intent that any personnel positions funded with ARPA will be coming back to you at least obviously yearly, but probably every 6 months. And we'll look at workloads and use so that the board has management to know if we're starting to attrit those positions out or if the contract is ending or the attorney recommends continuing it. It's, you know, it's going to take more work to manage it, but the idea was we'll affirmatively manage the workforce that you're funding with limited dollars.
Well, I mean, and I'm fine with this, but the way it looks, it's funded for 3 years with ARPA funds. But as it transitions and the need changes, will we always be able to use the ARPA funds for the next 3 years for these positions?
That's the plan. Right now, legal staffing is not listed as an eligible use, but it's not a non-eligible use either. We're seeking further guidance on that, and they expect to have that soon. Worst case, we could use the lost revenue component to cover these costs. Or, like Kathy had mentioned, the admin assistant's position was eliminated. Now that we're adding that back, that's 100% covered by ARPA. So there is some flexibility here based on lost revenue, but we will know in some fashion, some bucket, it will be covered through ARPA dollars for the 3.5 years.
Any other questions?
Some bucket of ARPA dollars, but you just used Yes Fund dollars to, are they ARPA dollars?
They're ARPA dollars.
The Yes Fund is?
No, the Yes Fund is not. That was for the technology. That's for Tammy's product. That's separate from this. Then Amanda's could be used through the lost revenue component of ARPA for
See,
her
your
technology.
difficulty is my limited ability to think things through. So, just-
Any other questions? All right, if not, then I would be looking for the motion to approve the request from our county attorney to, what is this, resolution 060121-AD-2043?
That's separate. That's to accept the funds. We just need a motion to allow Kathy to hire these positions.
That's the motion I'm looking for.
I'll move approval.
Motion made by Commissioner Phobie, seconded by Commissioner Brandt. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. That motion carries.
Thank you, and I apologize for any confusion I may have caused. I'm
No.
sure Amanda will be clear as a bell.
Leave it to the
And-
lawyers.
And I do appreciate the fact that, I do trust the fact that our county attorney, who is extremely frugal and good with her budget and stuff, that when she recommends these, she's doing it because there is a huge need. So, all right.
Well, as long as we're down the staffing path, why don't we go to Amanda now?
Well, Felix.
We have you sufficiently confused enough that we'll transition to Amanda right now.
I'm literally back there sweating now because I feel like the pressure's on. Good morning. I made my pitch at the last board meeting, so I will keep it brief, but I'll be specific on my intent. So since January 2019, you remember me talking about healthcare cases. They have increased 20% at Sherburne County. We get an average of 75 to 100 new cases every month. We think surely everyone in Sherburne County must be on healthcare, but they just keep coming. In addition, federal waivers prohibit anybody from being closed on healthcare at this time. Once these waivers will end, we've already been notified that we will have to manually touch every single case. You remember me saying that healthcare, it's not cases, it's individuals. So we're approaching the 18,000 persons on medical assistance in Sherburne County. In addition, we'll have to determine eligibility, which means verifications and all of that paperwork. Also, right now, we are trying to manage the change of circumstances. So we're getting backlogged due to person power that's causing delays for individuals on medications, appointments, medical procedures. We have staff in mandatory overtime right now. It's been voluntary overtime for the last several months, and now it's mandatory overtime because, again, we're just not able to keep up. So when we talk about a bulge, Commissioner Schmiesing's point, this is the perfect example. Work is being backlogged, backlogged, they're coming, and conversely, there's no way that healthcare cases will continue at these levels. So we know that they're going to go back to pre-COVID levels, if not lower or higher, but around that. And so we know that we're going to have it under control in 3 years, but again, really anticipating the current caseload and then that manual check. Now, when you talk about attrition, we do have anywhere from 40 to 50 eligibility specialists, and so we are confident that we are able to manage this through attrition, and we will be keeping an eye on for when we no longer need this position. So while the expense up here is through, I think it's December 2023, we will attrit that person when the need no longer arises. So with that, does anybody have any questions?
Any questions for Amanda?
There's got to be some.
Okay. Commissioner Smeezy. I think we've pretty much, I know you've all got the understanding of what our concerns are, and to make sure that, I know you'll stay on top of them and everything. Commissioner Phobie.
Thank you. I just have a question. It's one eligibility specialist, and
Yes,
the
ma'am.
amount is $276,000?
That's for a course of three
3
and a half
years.
years. I
Thank
believe.
you.
Yeah. I'd like to make that much too, but no, that's 3 years.
Thank you. Just wanted to be clear on that. So it covers the 3 years.
Okay. So any other questions then? If not, then I'd be looking for a motion to approve the HHS staffing request for one eligibility specialist FTE.
I'll move approval.
Motion made by Commissioner Phobie, seconded by Commissioner
Go ahead.
Brandt?
Yeah.
All right. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. That motion carries. Thank you. Oh, she's got something.
This aligns with the agenda item that was added.
Okay.
I'm just going to introduce it right now.
The grant.
Oh my gosh. Dan. All right. Yes, the agenda, and this is a late ad because I received notification last week. About 2 months ago, you may remember that I brought to board seeking authorization to apply for a community living infrastructure grant. So really that was for a housing resource specialist. This person would work on housing navigation and resources in 4 primary areas. One on referrals and outreach, so connecting individuals to housing and stabilization services. Second goal is to liaison between potential tenants and property managers, really establishing that relationship for folks with poor rental, credit, or criminal history. 3 would be prevention, so really keep folks in housing through case management and supportive services, reducing that risk of reentry and homelessness. And the last goal would be to work with those transitioning out of institutions, so foster care, hospitals, or jail. Now, I know I don't need to tell you that housing is an area where the needs are increased. I know that you get probably more calls than I do about housing, and so this is much needed. However, I'm going to speak for HHS, but as well as the county, there's really no dedicated person resource for housing. So anytime something on the topic of housing or homelessness comes on board, it's kind of like a game of hot potato, like who do we give this to? And then we don't really know what to do with it. Wanted to let you know that we did get the grant, yay, but it was at a 1.5 FTE instead of a 1 FTE. Now this happens all the time, and again, we have a lot of positions that are kind of conglomerations of different funding sources, and so we manage it, and we kind of put grants together, or we make it work financially. However, I feel like this one is different. Housing is such a critical need, and again, that need really goes far beyond the walls of HHS. Community stability, livability, economic development. We have more and more affordable housing or workforce housing coming into the county. And so, you know that at the state, the momentum is really there to provide more programs and more funding regarding housing. And so also, as you heard, the 4 grants, or the 4 goals that I mentioned, That's a huge job. And so when we talk about can we do this with one FTE, we know that we're really going to have to define this person's scope, because those 4 goals and just the amount of requests on housing is far beyond what any one person. So when you talk about a 0.5 position, we really don't think we would do this justice, and we couldn't achieve the grant goals. So we talk about, I talked with Bruce late last week, and so really I see 3 options. So one is forfeit the grant. Nobody ever likes to do that, but again, I'd rather not be spinning our wheels and not being able to move anything forward. The second one is we have a 0.5, and do we try to do something? Again, in terms of reporting on the goals, I'm just not sure what we can do with a 0.5. Or 3, do we make a request here with ARPA funds to do another 0.5 and to really make this a whole FTE? Housing in the ARPA guidelines is obviously a priority. There's more and more funding coming down from the feds and the state for ARPA, specifically for housing and homelessness. But at the same time, where I just stood before you, knowing that I could attrit the eligibility specialist, I don't see this being able to attrit in 3.5 years. I really see housing really as a core to a lot of our, and housing stability really as a core to a lot of our HHS initiatives. When we talk about reduced recidivism, when we talk about CD, when we talk about mental health, I mean, stable and safe housing is a core tenet of all of those. And so I guess I'm here asking for a 0.5 FTE with ARPA dollars to join with this other 0.5. I think, Bruce.
So to circle back to the earlier conversation, the positive synergy here is we can align the ARPA dollars with the grant award, so there's a termination, so you have less risk. The negative energy is we suspect once we get into housing, the demand is so great that we'll probably have to talk to you in 3 years about making this some other funded position. So unlike some of the others where we can see a surge and a drop, this one we see a demand. It's clearly, without going through the risk committee yet, it's clearly ARPA at least focused, but it's a little less clear that this one would attrit out. And so there's a risk and a reward here. But you've been talking about housing anyhow, and this is a way for us to put our toe in the water for 3 years and see what it looks like, or 2 years officially with the grant, although we think we can probably extend the grant.
Yeah.
So again, we can align grant and ARPA dollars probably 3 years, but in all honesty, up front, we want to be upfront. We think housing is not going to go away in 3 years, so.
And if I could just add on to that point, while this was a competitive grant, there are more and more of these solicitations. And so while I can't guarantee the funding after 2 years, I'm pretty confident that we can continue to make this a grant-funded position, hopefully at a 1 FTE.
Yes, I do feel that us not addressing the fact that we have a need for a housing person, I think is very short-sighted on our part. We are continuing to grow. The needs of housing are continuing to grow. And we talk about it all the time, and to consider that we have nobody that has that place here in our county to be that person to manage this. Like I said, I get calls consistently looking for affordable housing, looking for plain housing, period. So I view this as an opportunity to, like you said, put our toe in the water and develop hopefully someone that can carry us forward into the future. But those are my thoughts. Any other thoughts, Commissioner Phobie?
Thank you, Chair. I think the risk, the benefits that we won't see or that sometimes aren't quantifiable are really important for us with this piece. So I think the risk is worth it. I've been pretty clear on my hopes for us to move forward in the housing arena because Sherburne County just overall lacks such resources there, so.
Any other comments, Commissioner Brandt?
Yeah, being on the SHAC committee, we've talked about housing being critical to maintaining health in our communities, and I just think this is our opportunity to go for it. And so I would certainly support this also.
And I agree with your thought on the economic impact as well. If you cannot provide the opportunity for a strong workforce to afford to live in your county, we're going to struggle to maintain the workforce that the businesses need and the industry needs to continue their growth. Any other comments?
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Dolan?
I like that we're looking at this with our eyes wide open. I think as a board, we need to make sure this doesn't fall off our radar as far as how we plan to fund it in the future. Staff's given us a 3-year heads up that they think this is going to need to continue on, and we're going to have to figure out where we want this to fit within our departments and within our budgets going forward. So I just kind of want to charge us as a board and looking 3 years down the line instead of 3 years from now it coming up and having staff trying to figure it out, really looking forward and making sure that we measure the impacts of this and see its impact, not just on the community in general that I'm sure will be measurable, but also on the efficiencies within the department. I think Amanda mentioned that now when housing stuff comes in, it's got nowhere to land. And anytime you have that happening within a department, efficiency is definitely lost. So we want to make sure we keep track of all that and have a home for this going forward if we see the value in it. So.
Any other comments? All right.
Madam Chair, I'll move approval.
Actually, at this point, it hasn't gone to the Risk Assessment Committee. It was more an FYI for the next item that's coming up, but we did want to tie it to ARPA in some fashion. So at this point, we don't need a motion, but it will be coming back for approval probably in 2 weeks.
So we don't need to accept the award at this time.
That's coming up next. Do you want to do that now, Bruce?
Yeah, if the board's ready, you can just,
Yeah.
we would jump to item 5.7, and then you could move approval
Might
of
as well
the.
tie it up right now.
Sure.
And yeah. So then you can make that motion to approve accepting the
Accepting
award.
that grant award.
Yep. Motion made by Commissioner Phobie, seconded by
second it.
Commissioner Brandt. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. That motion carries. Okay, and then we'll wait for further information. Okay.
Now, you did make Amanda especially happy because now she doesn't have to stay through Mark and Dave's presentation for item 5.7.
There we go.
I need a Gantt chart to follow this agenda.
Okay, now back to more information on ARPA.
Yeah, as you recall, 2 weeks ago, you approved us applying for the funds. Now we need a resolution to actually accept the funds. So that's number one on here, accepting the $18,887,342 from the United States Treasury.
All right, I would be looking
Here,
for
isn't
that
it?
motion.
It's here, but for
It's-
the audit trail, we need an acceptance of the award.
We only got
Half of it.
Half
yes.
of it.
Half comes
Yep.
next year.
Looking for that motion then to approve that resolution accepting the coronavirus local fiscal recovery fund allocation of $18,887 or $1,342 from the United States Treasury. Boy, that's a big number I'm not used to saying.
Madam Chair, I'll move approval.
Motion made by Commissioner Dolan,
Second?
seconded by Commissioner Phobie. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. That motion carries. Okay, now where are we at on this? Number 3 then?
Now we're seeking approval of the weekly expenses. That's $87,840 that have gone through the Risk Assessment Committee. If you recall, all expenses under $50,000 are brought forward as a batch for you to approve.
Madam Chair, I'll move approval.
Okay, motion made by Commissioner Schmeezing, seconded by Commissioner Brandt. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. That motion carries.
And I also included a draft of the business relief policy. Just a couple quick highlights for discussion. We wanted to really have it targeted to the pandemic. So this particular draft has a 20% reduction in revenue to qualify, and that would compare first quarter of 2021 versus first quarter of 2019. So we think that really ties it to the pandemic, and we can show a 20% reduction is significant. Secondly, it would have a $20,000 max grant is the initial award that we're recommending. Home businesses would be eligible. I know that was a concern last time. Sole proprietors would be eligible for up to 50% of the max award. And as written, nonprofits would also qualify, but perhaps we want to have separate programs for nonprofits. So that's a discussion item. I didn't have a resolution of approval for the program today. It's more of a discussion. But we have been working with other counties, neighboring CMJTS, neighboring counties on mental health, housing, and some childcare initiatives. So perhaps we want to take the nonprofit out of the business relief and have separate programs for those individual items. But I wanted to throw that out there for discussion on how you wanted it to proceed.
Any thoughts? Any direction for Dan?
Dan, I guess I can ask a question to start with. So I know you've been getting contact from businesses within the county that are still looking for that. Without being terribly specific, have they been kind of bucketed in sector? Like, is there?
It's been a lot of home-based businesses.
Okay, and when we say
No
home-based.
particular sector, no particular
Okay.
sector.
So it's just that piece that was missed. Okay. That's my main question. I just want to keep, I guess my personal opinion is I want to try and keep the grants as tight as we can this way around and make sure that we're truly addressing stuff that we missed versus is.
Yeah, and if you did read the language, there is a tie-in to our entrepreneur program in some fashion too, that if they do receive a reward, we are going to be recommending that they have a session with our entrepreneurial lab to help them walk them through some of the challenges they're experiencing. So we want to tie the two programs together if possible as well. And so today it was just thrown in there for feedback. Feel free to get back to me, but maybe in 2 weeks we could approve a formal policy that would start maybe July 1.
All right, Commissioner Smeezing.
Okay, so this is the small business. You talked about nonprofits. I guess I didn't go over that again for me.
Sure, we could tie it to the revenue loss. If a nonprofit had a 20% loss, they would also qualify for this program. Or we could create separate programs that are specifically tied to specific industries like mental health, for instance, or housing or childcare. They wouldn't necessarily need to show a loss. The ARPA guidelines don't require that. We could have a specific program for these type of entities to help us grow programs in the area if need be. So that I'm just looking for feedback. Do we want to more specialize in target industries, or do we want to tie it to business relief where they do have to show a revenue loss?
Well, I certainly would, when we talk about nonprofits and mental illness and those types of things, I don't know if we want to tie this to the same program we do small business. I think we maybe want to be a little more open there. There's just so much money out there in different pockets right now, and my concern is once it gets out there, 3 years I probably won't be here, but there's going to be people sitting in these chairs that are going to have to make decisions based on probably a quite different scenario than what we have now. And I think that as we make decisions here, we've got to be vigilant in looking at that. And I've heard that in our discussion here today, and I think that's really good. But I think we got to keep our eye on. There's going to probably be some of the same faces in these chairs in 3 years. There's going to be some different ones, and the circumstances are probably going to be significantly different than they are today. But I think when it comes to our nonprofits, if we can help, we should, with the money that we have available.
Yeah. Commissioner Phobie.
Thank you, Chair. And I agree with that. I think that some of this, definitely we want to address people that had revenue losses, and keep an eye on that. And the home businesses are the ones that have been reaching out to me lately. But I think it's also an opportunity to build some capacity in areas that we perhaps have been, childcare that keeps coming back to us, that industry, and also mental health support.
And staff has been working with Amanda's staff to come up with program ideas, so we hope to have those to you soon. Speaking of all the other programs that are out there, perhaps it is a good idea, and maybe we could have this discussion, to hire a part-time grant coordinator here that could facilitate our business relief and help businesses know what other programs are out there. Obviously, it's a lot to ask staff. There's literally dozens of programs that are available right now. Perhaps we hire someone on a contract basis that would expire when the need goes away to maybe help us facilitate those discussions with businesses and help us market our different programs. So,
And would that help you to manage this?
Does that help Dan Weber?
If that would help you,
selfishly,
Dan.
yes, it would help me a great deal.
And that would be covered under the ARPA funding.
Correct.
So I think that's a good move, especially when we're talking the amount of time that these funds are going to be spread out over. I think you stepped up and did a phenomenal job in the first parts of the COVID, and I think now's the opportunity to give you some of that relief that you might, I am totally in favor of that. So I'd be looking then for that motion. I'm assuming we could do it now, or so you can get started on
Well,
it?
I
or
think
no?
since it wasn't on the agenda, if you just
Yeah.
give us
Okay.
consensus
We'll go through the
to
risk
prepare it.
assessment committee
All
and
right.
bring it back in 2 weeks, and we'll throw
Boy, the risk
together an
assessment
RFP
committee is
or
going to be
something.
busy.
I've
Okay,
been busy.
They have been.
all right.
Madam Chair, and just to echo, just to make sure I understood my colleagues, we think that splitting apart nonprofits away from that business one's the right way to go.
Yes.
Okay, all right.
Yes.
I agree. I just wanted to make sure that I
Yeah,
understood.
so we would create a different pool
Correct.
for the nonprofits. Okay,
And,
perfect.
and lastly, I hope to have a lost revenue estimate for you. We are working with staff on those. There are still some questions on guidance on what's eligible and what's not eligible. So hopefully in a couple weeks, I'll have a more accurate number, but I do think it'll be at least a third of our funds will have lost revenue, a little eligibility with the lost revenue clause,
Okay,
if that makes sense. So about a little over $6 million would be an estimate at this time.
okay, perfect. Well, thank you, Dan, for those updates.
Thank you.
All right, moving on then to our COVID-19 pandemic update and county response. Nicole?
Good morning, Madam Chair and Commissioners. I'm pleased to announce there is no funding requests in this COVID-19 update.
Move to accept.
Are you going to use the term ARPA at all?
No, and I will not use ARPA.
Take your time.
Thank you for that update.
A quick snippet here. Everything is trending down. The positivity rate, the testing rate, hospitalization rate. The only one that I would have just a little caution on is the testing rate. As it gets to that lower level, we would continue to encourage communities to make sure that they are testing if they're symptomatic. But again, symptoms and hospitalizations are certainly down, and as well as the number of cases. So seeing good things happen with COVID here throughout Minnesota. There we go. And then over the last, the 14-day formula, so the Minnesota Department of Health puts those out and really was geared towards schools. From February until now, we're seeing a nice decline again. We're almost at the February rate now, according to the MDH guidelines, but I have an updated one as of the 31st. But overall, we're in a good space here with our 14-day formulas. Great news about this. We were in the red and orange the last time I was here 2 weeks ago. We are not in the orange or red anymore. We are in the green, which is very good. So in that less than 20 cases per 14 days in that 10,000. And only one county in Minnesota is in the red. So overall as a state, we're really seeing those rates come down, and we're really pleased to see that. And then on to vaccine data. Minnesota, again, continues to strive for that 80% vaccination rate. I know when we hit 70, some of the things will change, or July 1st. But overall, we're certainly improving there. We've gotten very close to the state average with our 65-plus population, where we spent a lot of time in the last few months. So we're pleased to see that. The 12-plus, this is a new rate number for us. We had been at 16-plus in the past, so now when we take that extra couple of years in there, we're certainly lower than the state, but not as far down as I thought we might be, so good news there. And total for the population, we're about 37%.
Madam Chair, quick question.
Dylan.
Total population, I assume that is total population 12-plus now?
I believe it is. Some of their data is not overly clear, so I can articulate that a little bit better hopefully next time, but I believe that is similar to those that are eligible.
Yeah, and I just asked because we've tracked that all along, but as we've gone, who's eligible has changed, so I just want to make sure.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
The rates actually did take a jump up this past week. MDH put a new geocoding on their mix system, and so we did see an increase about 4 to 5% in a lot of our areas. So those folks that are on borders between counties got put in the right county, and so we're feeling much better about that. We had thought that that might be the case in some instances, but nice to see that that actually did happen. So And overall, here at Sherburne County, I just looked at the total number of doses given, 15,756. So there's been a lot of shots in arms here with our staff. And then overall, the vaccination rate, 1 dose, 16 plus. We don't have a 12 plus map as of this date today. But certainly by zip codes, we're out of the 30%. So everybody's 40% and up, and I anticipate we'll hit that 60% here shortly. So good news there as well.
Just a little side note, I want to do make a shout out to Father Kevin Anderson and the Christ Our Light community. After each Mass this last weekend, they had a physician present on the importance of vaccination. So I know my numbers up in that area are low, but we're doing everything we can to get that word out. So thanks, Father Kevin and the Catholic community up there. And they had about 50 people after some of the Masses wait to hear about vaccination. So
that is terrific news.
Good.
We've changed our process just a little bit too with vaccination. So throughout June here, we are incorporating anything here at the Sherburne County Government Center back up into HHS. Tuesdays had been their day to offer vaccinations to the community anyway, and so we've tried to wrap those together, and we'll see how that goes. But overall, I think we'll be able to meet the need that are wanting to get vaccinated here. And then we've got a number of off-site clinics still planned throughout June. So coming up June 12th, we've got the Juneteenth event in St. Cloud at Lake George. And we're doing that in combination with Stearns and Benton County, so that we'll have a tri-county area. Planning to offer vaccines there as well as other screenings like HIV, blood pressures, anything that we need to assist them with any services available in the counties. We also have Saran Lutheran coming up, an event there, CARE. We're going to be working to do a vaccination clinic along with a food distribution, so we're hopeful that is an attraction. And then we've also got some second doses at school districts, so Princeton and Big Lake yet this month. So certainly winding down, the events are certainly smaller. We haven't hit any 700 anymore. Most of these have all been under 100, but we're meeting a need, and we've been able to accommodate walk-ups on all of the events. So we're getting more of those folks in.
Nicole, are you planning on continuing to work with the school districts as school now is winding down, but over the summer and when it gets back to getting ready to go back, I'm assuming that the desire for vaccines will increase at that time. Are you continuing to work with the school districts then for those opportunities?
We are. We took a little pause the last couple of weeks with graduations and proms and things. They were just a bit like, woof, we need to kind of get those things settled. And then I think through their summer schooling programs and community ed, we'll be working with them to coordinate some of those. But we're certainly encouraging our 12 to 18-year-olds to go in for their regular clinical appointments, their screening, because they are due for other vaccines as well, and we'd certainly want that to be with their healthcare provider if possible. So hopefully we'll fill the gap, but we won't be the main source of those vaccines throughout the summer.
All right, thank you.
One other question for the board, just wondering about the frequency of updates, if you'd like me to continue to come at each board meeting, or if you'd like a monthly update, or even going to the community health board updates, which are every other month.
Are you going to ask for money? Welcome anytime, as long as you don't want money.
Thoughts for Nicole?
Madam Chair, I guess if, as long as we receive like a written report, I wouldn't be opposed to having them just at Public Health Board. I think as long as we get monthly written, I think we can review it and then bring it into the Health Board would be fine.
Certainly. Okay.
Good with that. Okay.
I'll provide a monthly written update then.
All right.
Any other questions?
Any other questions for Nicole? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right.
And-
Yes,
Oh, I'm sorry.
go ahead.
The, that was the second item under your agenda item 5.5. The first was, and Tammy and Stacy are not here, but they asked me to present real briefly for the board.
Stacy's here.
Oh, did you want to
Yeah,
present?
She snuck in.
You snuck in. Did you want to present or you want me to present?
You might as well present. You made the trip down.
I did, right? All those steps.
Right?
You came down them safely, though, didn't you?
I did. Yes. Oh, I might have just shut off something.
Okay, so we have went ahead and updated our preparedness plan to be consistent with the updated guidance from MDH, which was actually effective on May 28th. That's when the guidance was effective. I believe Bruce has already sent or submitted the updated preparedness plan that we hope to make effective today. The plan is consistent with the guidance, with those updates in the guidance. And basically the main changes are we have incorporated the updates that we've already had, which was the no longer required to wear the face masks, no longer required to do the online health screening, and then the travel quarantine is no longer needed as well. So we've already discussed those, but then in addition to that, MDH is no longer requiring us to maintain the social distance and the room capacities as part of our preparedness plan. So that's one of the main differences. And so really, and a lot of the extra precautions as it relates to customers, like things that we need to do when processing payments and things like that. But the main thing is just that social distancing piece, not requiring that anymore in our preparedness plan. Some of the things that still stand are the, we continue to connect with employees who submit a COVID notification. So if they or a household member are currently experiencing symptoms, if they've been exposed to a COVID positive person, we will continue to work with them to determine if they can return to work, if they need to quarantine, if they need to isolate. We will continue doing that, as well as cleaning precautions and then just some ventilation types of things. So it's a lot shorter preparedness plan at this point, but being consistent with that guidance. This current plan would be in effect until July 1st. And at that point, after that point, I don't think that we would need a preparedness plan any longer, but we'll have to wait and see if MDH comes out with any updated guidance after that date.
All right. Any questions?
I don't think so.
No. So the action item asked for is to approve the recommendations
Yes, correct.
for the COVID-19 preparedness plan.
Madam Chair, I'll move approval.
Motion made by Commissioner Dolan, seconded by Commissioner Brandt. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. That motion carries. I think everybody's looking forward to getting back to
Thank you very much.
business as what we used to know. All right, thank you for that update.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on then to a planning and zoning discussion about performance standards for exterior storage of vehicles. Mark, who your team
Madam Chair, Commissioners, thank you. Dave Lucas and I are going to give this presentation. We've had this presentation or something like this, and we've been working on this ordinance for a period of time. But the purpose of this initially was going to be a workshop, but it's now just a regular agenda item. But it's to update the County Board on Planning and Zoning's efforts to respond to complaints connected to exterior storage of vehicles. I'll provide some examples of the issues that we keep bumping into, outline what other communities are doing, and introduce a draft ordinance that we have. So with that, Dave, do you want to?
Madam Chair, members of the board. So existing issues, the most common complaint that we receive in our department, since 2019, we've responded to over 250 solid waste complaints. And of that, junk vehicles is the most common complaint that we receive. It also requires more staff time than any other type of solid waste complaint that we receive due to the fact that you need to verify tabs and whether or not the vehicle is operable or not. So that takes a tremendous amount of staff time to oversee. We also deal with a lot of repeat violators in the county. We may get people to come into compliance, and then 6 months, a year, or even maybe less, Those vehicles seem to work their way back onto the property. I think they just transfer around from different parcels in the county. And, you know, we're back dealing with that same violator. And that, the repeat violations takes a tremendous amount of staff time as well. There are obviously impacts to neighboring property values. That's probably the most common complaint that we hear from people, that, you know, that maybe their house is up for market and they're living next door to somebody who has 16 plus vehicles. There are obvious environmental impacts. It's demand on county resources that I spoke about. And our existing ordinances do not currently provide for performance standards. A couple of examples that we have, you know, obviously addresses, parcels are not included. It's a 2.5 acre platted lot. This is a property that's been in and out of compliance for some time. A different perspective on that same property. And then roadside snapshots of various properties in the county that common complaints that we receive, junk vehicles. Mark?
Yeah, so the existing ordinance that, get up to the mic so I'm clear. So the existing ordinance that the county uses is a solid waste ordinance, and it's a pretty standard ordinance. It's actually common throughout many counties. And it limits how many unlicensed or inoperable vehicles you can store on a property. So that item number 2, that owner shall store no more than 2 inoperable or unlicensed vehicles outside. And our zoning ordinance didn't really give us a lot of teeth to work with also. So we kept bumping into issues that these ordinances weren't sufficient. So just for context, you know, throughout some of the additional counties, one of the common themes that you'll see in these counties is most of these counties and communities still continue to deal with inoperable or unlicensed. Our ordinance is not really looking at tackling unlicensed or inoperable vehicles. That would still live in the solid waste ordinance. But what it would do is performance standards on the exterior storage of vehicles. So many of these communities limit, if you basically can't have a junk car sitting outside. Say it either has to be enclosed in a building or completely screened from view. I think Wright County has one of the little bit more restrictive one, where they restrict it to 1 car and basically parked in the back part of the yard. That's unlicensed or inoperable. But most of the existing ordinances that are out there still kind of revolve around unlicensed or inoperable, like our ordinance had established. So this is something we've been looking at for years, because it is a draw and a drain on our department as far as resources and time. So in 2007, we asked, you know, 8 townships, you know, what's your feedback on this? So 5 out of the, actually 7 townships responded to the survey, so they'd like to see some amendments, something changed here. So we drafted an ordinance, went out to different SCAT meetings in 2008, proposed these ordinances, 2018, and talked about parking on improved surfaces. But that ordinance wasn't well received by the townships. In 2019, Dave and I went to a SCAT meeting and explained to the townships, all right, we're going to try and stricter enforcement of our rules. And Dave, what you basically did, Dave asked his staff, is to try and ensure, you know, every vehicle's licensed and operable. And his staff was going out having to verify, okay, can that vehicle start? So, you know, middle of winter, you're getting complaints, you're following up on these notices, trying to get a car to start in the middle of winter. Not always the ideal situation. 2020, Commissioner Danielowski asked us to kind of, you know, maybe attend one of the township meetings and have a discussion about this. So we actually went out to Big Lake Township to have this conversation. Our intent was in 2020 to present this to all the townships. COVID kind of got in the way, and 2020, we're coming forward with a revised revision that you'll see today. So what we're looking for is to amend the ordinance to establish in the zoning ordinance a definition of an improved parking surface, an area used to park a vehicle, concrete, asphalt, stone, or other durable surface. We basically want to ensure that the parking areas are delineated on parcels. That we define motor vehicles. It's defined in the solid waste ordinance, but it was never defined in the zoning ordinance. What do we mean by motor vehicles? So anything that's self-propelled. So that's boats, RVs, recreational ATVs, race cars, things like that. Inoperable, define what operable is, that it's powered under its own wheels. So the last two definitions come from our solid waste ordinance. The first one is a new definition to help support this proposed ordinance that we're looking for some feedback from the county board on. And we're looking to add into the zoning ordinance under section 17, general regulations for parking areas for platted lots. And this is the distinction I want to make. This is focusing on residentially platted parcels. It's not unplatted 10-acre, 20-acre parcels. It's not the agricultural lands. It really is our residential subdivisions. And we're trying to make that distinction because there is a certain standard you get when you plat off a property. Most of them in 2.5 acres. 2.5 to 5 acres is the common lot size. But those areas many times are converted to farm fields. There's not a lot of screening, natural screening that occurs. People are buying into those properties with an expectation that it's not going to become a junkyard, like that example that Dave provided a little bit earlier. And this ordinance, we feel, will help establish some of those standards. So what we're looking at doing is requiring all motor vehicles to be stored on an improved parking surface area in platted residential developments, and establish a maximum amount of impervious surface that can occur. For example, like in a shoreline district, you can't exceed 25% of impervious surface. But maximum parking space, excluding driveways, shall not exceed, it's amount to be determined. I do have some numbers to present based off of that. That's tied to lot size. So like a percentage of your lot would be improved hard surface or improved parking area, exclusive of the driveway. So the rationale is we're trying to apply tighter regulations to the maximum tighter regulations to minimize the nuisance and possible environmental impacts caused by excessive amounts of vehicles stored on parcels. So this is just an example. If we were looking at a 2.5 acre lot, and that's what these lots are, they're 2.5 acres, and if we had 2% lot coverage, that's what, that red area is about 2,500 square feet. And the one on the left is about 1,300 square feet, so that's roughly 1% of the lot size. So what our ordinance would do is look to limit how much improved parking surface you have on your property outside of the driveways that you could store vehicles on. That's the first example. And the second example is on a 5 acre lot. Because we have, most of our lots range either from, most common lot is 2.5 acres in our platted developments. We obviously have older platted subdivisions around our lakes that are half acre and less, and those would also be affected by this regulation. And so on 5 acre lots, you're looking at about 4,300 square feet. And if you look at the left image, that's what about 4,500, 4,300 square feet amounts to. And then on the right side, that's 1%, roughly about 2,500 square feet.
So just mark what you're saying, Madam Chair. What you have outlined there in red, if we change the ordinance, they could use that for parking as long as they surfaced it?
If they did an improved surface, we're really trying to delineate where you're parking vehicles. There's a couple different reasons for that. One is for the general aesthetics of it. And then two, the other thing is, if you line an area with an improved surface, it could even be as simple as delineating the area, putting mulch down. You're not getting vegetation growing up. You're not getting trees and weeds growing through that stuff. One of the environmental issues, yes, we're concerned about leaking of vehicles, but one of the other nuisances that comes with junk vehicles and junk accumulation, like we see at some of these properties, is rodent issues, rodent infestations. So establishing some improved surface, a maintained surface that we could enforce and have boundaries to do that work is what we're trying to do. And it has been a tricky ordinance to establish, and I've worked with Assistant Attorney Tim Syme on this, and Dave Lucas and Nancy quite a bit on this ordinance, because we have a variety of homes in Sherburne County. We have a variety of parcels in Sherburne County, large acreage, but what we were really trying to, put our focus on was these residential developments, because that's where we're getting a large volume of our complaints and large amount of the issues. So we're trying to make it so it's not overreaching, impacting all the residents of Sherburne County or all the lots in Sherburne County, but primarily give some higher performance standards in our residential subdivisions that don't currently exist.
If you took that 4,500 square feet, could you move it back anywhere on the lot?
You could.
Okay.
Yep. So one of the most common things in Sherburne County is, people come out here and they put up their home and then they do their accessory building. And the accessory building isn't defined in a certain spot. Obviously, you have to still comply with setback requirements. But beyond that, yes, it could go anywhere on the property.
Madam Chair.
Yeah.
To Commissioner Smeezing's point, if you moved it, just as an example, to the back of the lot, that driveway to the back of the lot would count as part of the impervious surface, though, the parking area, right? So by extending where it is, you're reducing what you could have.
I think, Mark, didn't you say it was exclusive of driveways?
Excluding driveways is the way the ordinance is written.
Right, but the question is, the driveway is, we typically view that as the driveway to the residence, not the driveway to my extra parking area. So if the board wanted something like that, that's something we'd have to clarify. Whether you want it screened is something the extra parking area is something we'd want clarified.
Well, that's something to think about.
I do know too, I get contacted frequently because, and I think any of us that represent areas that do have these subdivisions, these 2.5s. And it is when you see something happen in your community, in your neighborhood, such as some of the ones that we've been on site on, it is clearly an reach of what we should be allowing at best because of what it does to the property values. Anything that, I'll use a city example that just recently Big Lake dealt with. There was a $20,000 difference in what the person next door to one of these excessive storage areas for their sale of their house. That's $20,000. That's huge. We also are charged with protecting not only the welfare, but the values as well in our duties. So I do appreciate, I think we really have to work with the townships for the understanding that we're talking about these subdivision lots. We are not talking about these larger acre lots. And something has to be done because the residents are wanting it. It isn't us making this up. We're getting contacted, and you are spending way too much time dealing with these issues with not enough teeth to be able to provide you the opportunity to do your job and react to the residents and their concerns. So I'd like to see us really move forward on something because it's been discussed for too long. We have to really settle on something here soon.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And that's kind of what we're looking for, is just some direction. We wanted to present this issue to the board. The townships have given us kind of mixed feelings on this. At 2017, felt there was something that needed to be done. 2018, felt we went too far. This is where we're trying to land in between those things to respond to the concerns of the residents, the demand on, it really does fall a lot on, the solid waste side of our department to balance these things out. So we are looking for just some direction from the board. If you think this is an ordinance that we should move forward with, one possible next step could be bringing this to Planning Commission in June for a discussion there.
And most times the townships aren't even aware of the amount of residents that call, because if they do get a phone call, they're told to call the county right away. So they're not even really aware of the extent of what some of the concerns are.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Dolan.
A couple things. First one, I think we should probably work on the definition of vehicle. And I say that only because I've run into it in several different places in the state. And in looking at this and the way we defined it, self-propelled, I mean, that doesn't address the property we just looked at with 3 semi-trailers parked on it. So I think the state defines it as anything licensed to go down the road. So if it's a semi-trailer, it needs a plate. If it's a trailer, it needs a plate, whatever it is. I'd say my guess is we're better off just adopting the state's definition of that. The other thing was, I think we should take a look at, as long as we're expanding the ability to put in impervious surface, I think we should probably look at really what we allow for size of accessory buildings at the same time. I know we're not super restrictive by any means, but I do know that there's a good chunk of people that if they were able to build a larger accessory building and put some of these things inside, they would probably seize that opportunity. It's probably not some of the properties we looked at, but I think if we're looking at expanding where we can park them, we should probably look at enhancing the ability to park them indoors. You know, even if it's a 10, 15% increase in the amount of size for an outbuilding, it might be beneficial.
So, Commissioner Dolan, Madam Chair, I just want to clarify, so you're suggesting that we use a state definition for vehicles. You know, we have motor vehicle right now, and anything, you know, demolition derby, cars aren't required to be licensed, and so we did work hard on that definition, and it's just been kind of refined over the years, and that's a definition taken right out of the solid waste ordinance. But one thought is to include another definition, leave motor vehicle in there, but then maybe look at trailers.
Yeah, or maybe eliminate the self-propelled piece.
Okay.
I mean, that.
Yeah, we'll look at that, yeah.
Yeah, I'd just say, because I've run into it before, even within cities where they have their own definition for that, and all of a sudden we're dealing with a parking lot. And, you know, is it parking or is it storage? Well, it's got a license plate on it. It should be parking, right? Just be careful with that is my piece there.
And I like what you put into the operable as well, because it does address some issues where you would think that by putting the need for current registration and tabs, that would reduce the amount of vehicles that someone would keep. But as we well know, we do have a certain situation where they went and registered everything.
That's a common occurrence. And that's that kind of cat and game of mouse of, okay, that plate expires in July. Okay, 1 month from now, I know that they're going to be out of compliance because they have 2 vehicles that are July 2021.
But yet we're talking 50 to 60 different. I mean, we're not talking a small amount. So that's where we're trying to figure out where that falls into place. Because I think anyone that goes out and registers 50 to 60 vehicles.
How about containers?
So
we have that already.
I do have, so, and to respond to Commissioner Schmiesing and Tim Dolan's comment, in 2018 or 19, we did modify the accessory building ordinance and did tackle shipping containers, semi-trailers. So that photo is an older photo. Our ordinance does now allow us the ability to enforce someone who's using a semi-trailer for storage, not for business purposes. You have your semi-truck and trailer, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about shipping containers and semis used as storage containers. And again, we focus that one on residentially platted lots because shipping containers are practical in other instances, but on our residentially platted lots, we view them as a temporary use for construction or moving purposes.
Yeah. Commissioner Fovey.
So I think this is great, and I really appreciate the work on this. Obviously, I get a number of calls also with this, and just driving around my neighborhoods, it seems to be getting worse and worse. So I think it's good timing. Do we address anywhere those gray hoop? I see the reaction already. Few people have called me and said, can't we do something about those, you know, Menards, they buy them at Menards.
Tarp buildings. Yeah, the
brown or
tarp
gray.
buildings, they last about a season and then they
then they fall apart.
Yeah. You know, building code has not really, that would be something that, yes, that would be a performance standard in our general regulations because those typically are not adhered to the ground, attached to the ground, square footage. That is something, it's an issue. I guess I hadn't heard a ton of it. I might not be getting those calls recently, but that is something we can bring up and explore as a performance standard in our ordinance because Section 17 allows us general regulations and there are things that we need to do to make improvements on performance standards for properties. And that is you know, as these issues come up, we do respond to them, so.
And there again, when you say properties, we are talking in our subdivision properties.
Development.
Yes, right now, this ordinance is strictly focused in our subdivision. The shipping containers was focused in our subdivisions, because there is a little different standard, a residentially platted lot versus a meets and bounds 40-acre parcel.
Yes.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Commissioner Smeezy.
I agree it's a good idea for us to look at this and for us to try to advance some. I think we need to understand that we can pass all the ordinances we want, and we'll be chasing around enforcing. Will the county attorney be interested in more of an extended list? Are you going to want to prosecute all these violators out there? And you know, so I think we want to be a little bit careful with it, because you know, you can give the same pile of junk to two different people. You drive by one, you'll say, oh, it looks fine. And the other, just the way people are different in the way that they pile their stuff out there. So I agree that we need to do something if we can, but let's be a little bit careful that we don't develop an ordinance that we are allowing one neighbor to beat up on another neighbor. Let's make sure we're accomplishing what we want to accomplish. And I don't have a problem with what you're trying to do here. I think it's good that it is for the platted areas, and that's what we need to do, so.
Yep. And I agree, most of these ordinances that do get created, I think the county attorney will agree with us, that it's at least a tool. Most people will comply. You definitely will have some of those people that just will not, and we're never gonna change that thought process. But the majority of the people do comply, and it gives our planning and zoning department the ability to at least have something to get it cleaned up. And
I agree, and it's a tool that we should use. I just want to make sure that we aren't developing a tool for one neighbor to have a battle with another neighbor, because we have that goes on all the time.
Madam Chair, and
Chair Dolan.
Commissioner Schmeezing brings up a point that I was going to make, and that's, you know, the amount of staff time and resources put behind enforcing these things is something we really, really need to take a look at as we get more I mean, it's just going to keep growing, and we need to try and put just as much effort into finding ways to make that piece more efficient, whether it's through technology or through policy, to where we're not creating this huge burden on staff going forward. I think there's probably, and I'll lean to Mr. Syme on this, is there any way for us in the platting process to require covenants? That a developer puts in covenants?
In the past, we've required covenants. It's not something we can enforce, though, since covenants are essentially a private agreement.
Right, and I guess my question would be is if we had the requirement that covenants for platted developments meet our zoning codes, then people within that development that have a problem could potentially go the civil route instead of it being on our enforcement plate. And it might end up working better versus us trying to tackle it.
I think it depends on the development. Our experience has been they will still call us and say, we don't want to spend the money to go after our neighbor. Can't you do something about it? Or a developer hasn't wanted to enforce their own covenants. So it's another tool that we could discuss.
Yeah.
Well, are they, if the covenants aren't, the developer can't put in covenants that are less restrictive than county ordinance, can they?
No, not normally.
Right, a covenant couldn't allow.
I'm misunderstanding something here.
I'm saying that they're required to put in those covenants, that it's more of a tool for a neighbor or a set of neighbors to address the issue without having it come through us and go through the long legal process of public law instead of being civic. You know, if I have 5 of my neighbors threatening to sue me for not adhering to the covenants, it might be a little different than blowing off a county official that's coming and giving me a summons that I know it's going to take 2.5 years to deal with. So it wasn't necessarily to make it more restrictive. Like Tim said, it's just one more tool to help our citizens kind of self-police their own neighborhoods potentially.
Well, and I think what happens with covenants as well is when you have these developments that were platted quite a ways back and then the economy went down, pretty soon you had some of these covenants that were in there and then a new developer comes in and that doesn't seem to stay picked up. And then people come in and buy properties that aren't aware of these covenants. It gets to be, covenants are a challenge as well.
They expire as well, don't they?
They can.
They can. Yeah, and again, I wasn't saying that it's a catch-all. I was saying an and scenario, just giving people another tool versus the really long, drawn-out, intensive, expensive process that we have as a government, so.
Okay.
What are we, your comments about larger buildings?
Yeah.
I'd be interested, what are our rules on that now?
Yeah, so in platted, let's stick with platted lots. So platted lots,
30 by 40?
unless is 1,200 square feet, and this is for single buildings. We do allow multiple buildings, and I'll get to that. 2.5 to 5 acres, it's 1,800, so 30 by 60 is probably the most common dimension you see there. And then when we get over 5 acres, we go to 5,500, because that is a certain class of building for residential use before you get into engineering or some other type of level of personal storage building. So those are the numbers we have, and then we put no more than 4% of a lot can be covered. So we used a similar thing like we are proposing for this one, you know, maximum and then a percentage of your property. So on a platted 2.5 acre lot, you can have up to 4% of your lot covered with accessory buildings, which actually turns out to be about about a little bit less than 3,200 square feet of buildings. So you could have two.
Okay, so you can have, so that explains one that I've looked at where it's 2 buildings built end to end. And
yeah, there's some separation requirements there. Part of the reason we historically had restrictions, and we are pretty lenient when I did do the research on this compared to other counties, we are pretty lenient with our accessory building sizes. And one of the reasons we placed restrictions on those really large buildings is if they're not used for a business when it's first constructed, people look at that and see that as an opportunity to move a business out there. So the amount of enforcement cases over the years that I've dealt with, it wasn't the person who originally built the building. Sometimes it was, sometimes it wasn't, but many times the follow-up to that real large accessory building is someone running a commercial operation from a residential property that exceeds our ordinance.
It's amazing what a realtor will tell you you can do.
Yes. So.
Well then, are we comfortable with moving this forward then to the Planning Advisory Commission to mull over and to get us back some recommendations to go forward with? Yes.
well, Madam Chair, I have no problem. I'm not ready to endorse this today.
No,
but
no.
I'm ready to allow the Planning Commission to
Yes.
certainly review it and weigh in on it.
Right. Yeah.
That's appreciated, because I mean, those planning commission members, they see the home business accessory buildings. They serve as, many times, township officials. So they are familiar with these issues, and it's a good opportunity for us to air this out with that board.
Good place, yeah.
Yep. All right. Okay.
Well, thank you.
Appreciate that update. Thank you. All right. Moving on to our commissioner correspondence and committee reports. Who wants to start? Tim, are you ready?
I am not ready.
You're not ready. You ready, Felix?
Let me look and see here. I don't think I had much.
Barb is ready.
Yeah, on the 19th, I participated in community partners with Independent School District 728 in Manatee. And on 21st, there was a SHAC executive committee that I was involved with. There was another DHS steering committee that was at the same time, so I missed that one. And on the 25th, I was involved with a Metro Mississippi River Crossing meeting number 3, and that was on looking at Highway 10 and crossings across the Mississippi at various spots, and future discussion. And then on the 28th, I was involved with Highway 10 Elk River Corridor study they had on Highway 10 also, getting closer to. that's all.
Okay, thank you. Lisa?
Sure. I had a law library board meeting, Great River Regional Library Board of Trustees met, Substance Use Prevention Coalition, SUP, met. We had a Tri-County Solid Waste meeting. TRICAP had their annual meeting. I hosted an AMC Futures discussion with Susan Brower, the state demographer, and then had a Rum River One Watershed One Plan Policy Committee meeting.
All right, thank you.
AMC Board and the Tri-County Solid Waste meeting. I did get in there. Did you notice that I was there?
I did. I saw you, or I heard you, or
Whatever.
we're on. Yes.
Apparently you didn't.
They use a different platform.
Apparently you didn't capture the picture. Yeah, they do. That was.
Different.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Commissioner Dolan?
All right, I had County EDA, Central Mississippi River Regional Planning Partnership meeting, as well as this month.
Meeting's gonna end.
It was a combined NACO Broadband Task Force and the Telecommunications and Technology Policy Steering Call. And I think that's it. I did have an interesting meeting with the Elk River YMCA, and they're starting to do some strategic planning with a heavy focus on services and everything outside the four walls of the YMCA, so in the greater community. And I think they're looking for some partnership ideas. Obviously, they're doing the childcare within the government center here. And I was curious as to whether the board thought that maybe having the executive director or someone from their organization come and present maybe in a workshop or something to kind of get our thoughts rolling on where they might be able to fit, especially in conversations with earlier on ARPA funds and what we want to see outside services look like. I think they'd be a natural fit and partner. So if you guys want that, I'm more than happy to work with Dan and get that set up at a future workshop, so.
Thoughts?
Be fine.
Yep.
Yeah,
Workshop?
I think so, Molly. You think
Yeah,
Molly would.
Molly or someone,
Yep.
maybe even from the larger Y organization, just kind of, so we understand what resources they have, so we can maybe start to align them with some of the stuff coming down the pike, so.
Yeah, I had met, I think I mentioned last time also with the new United Way executive director, and I think there's might be some synergy there also. And her and Molly connect quite a bit, so.
Working on silo
that's
connections.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I think good idea.
All right. Okay, I attended the EDA meeting, also had my options monthly board meeting. I attended the Big Lake Township meeting with Bruce to give an update to the township board and from the county's perspective. And then May 27th, also attended the CMRP meeting that Commissioner Dolan referred to. And that was it for me. Okay, so at this time, I am looking to recess our meeting for 10 minutes. We will then reconvene the meeting and then go into opening the closed session. So back here at 11:25.